Alright, so this is our next notes in algebra. This is on systems of equations. We've been working on these for about a week now, going on maybe 3 days. And this is another step in that. First we looked at what they were, and then we looked at how we can use addition and subtraction to get rid of them. And and then we used substitution, where we would figure out what y is and substitute in that. That would eliminate one of the variables and solve that way. Well, here we're going to use multiplication to eliminate one of the variables. And really, in systems of equations, that's the main thing. You want to eliminate one of the variables, solve for that variable, then plug that back in and solve for the other variable. But this is elimination by or using multiplication. And again, this is done when we first look at it in addition and subtraction, and really substitution will not work. The main steps in this you can kind of see down here are, so what you're going to do is you're going to take these equations, you're going to multiply one equation by a constant to get opposite terms. So you get two terms in these two different equations that are the same, or maybe opposites, and then you can either add or subtract. It really depends. You can do it a lot of different ways. The ones I'm going to do is we're going to be subtracting. So then again, add or subtract to eliminate one of the terms, and then solve for the remaining terms. Pretty similar way to do these. All the types you've been looking at so far. So here's an example. So let's say we have 5x plus 6y equals negative 8, and 2x plus 3y equals negative 5. So you look at these, the x's aren't the same, the y's are not the same. But you can see they have a common denominator here. And really you can do these a lot of different ways. If we wanted to get rid of the x, we could just multiply this by 5 and this by 2, and then we would be able to get rid of them. So that's kind of what we're doing here. So if you look at the bottom here, we're going to take this top one, okay, this one right here, and we're going to make it match up to the 6y. And all we have to do is take a 2 and multiply it through. We're going to use the distributive property, right? So 2 multiplied on both sides. So in the end, when we do that on this side, we get 4x plus 6y equals negative 10. So then we can then take that, use the top equation that we started with, we would then subtract them, and we get x right here, 5x minus 4x is x, and then 6y minus 6y is going to give us 0, and then here we're going to end up with negative 8 minus a negative 10 is going to give us 2. And then in the end we're left with x equals 2. So that's our x, and then we plug it back in. Check for solution. So if we plug that back in, we would solve for y. We remember x is 2, so we plug that in. 2x plus 3y equals negative 5. We plug the x in, we get 4 plus 3y equals negative 5. And then we have 3y equals negative 9 by moving this 9 by 4 over. And then we're going to solve for y, and that's negative 3. Then we have the two answers. Well, we solved for this one initially. This was our 2x equals 2x plus 3y equals negative 5. So let's just plug this into the 5x plus 6y equals negative 8 to make sure we got the right answer, right? So let me do that math. I'm going to pause, and then I'll show you what I did. Okay, so I got this written down, the 5x plus 6y equals negative 8. That's our other equation we started with. And then we just plug in 2 for x and see if we get negative 3 for y. So we got 5 times 2 plus 6y equals negative 8. So 5 times 2 is 10 plus 6y equals negative 8. And again, we're going to minus 10 from both sides. And we're going to get 6y equals negative 8 minus 10, so we just go negative 8 minus 10, and then we're going to add a negative 10, so it's going to give us negative 18, divided by 6, and y is negative 3, like it should be. And we end up with the right answer, so that tells us that that is the answer for both of these equations, and that's kind of substitution. Now, there's another way to do this, is sometimes it's not going to work to just multiply one of the equations by the other, like we did there. If you remember, here we just took this bottom one and just multiplied by 2. And then we got the 6y. Sometimes that's not going to work, and we might have to do both. So here we have this one, 4x plus 2y equals 8. and 3x plus 3y equals 9. And this is kind of hinted at this process with the last one. And we didn't need to do both, but here we do, because if we take, there's no number we can multiply 3 by to get 2. There's no number, whole number or constant that we can multiply 2 by to get 3. We could do decimals, and man, that gets really messy. So here we just we switch these numbers. So the 2 is going to get multiplied by the 3, and the 3 by the 2, this whole thing, and then we'll end up with the same. So here we do the 3, and we get 12x plus 3 times 2y is 6y equals 24. And then here we do the 2 through, so it'd be 6x. Don't worry about this yet. We're going to add that in. But 2 times 3x is 6x, and then we're going to get 2 times 3y is 6y, and then 2 times 9 is 18. And then we're going to subtract them, so that's where this came from. So we put that. We're going to end up with 6x. These cancel, and then we get 6. Divide both sides by 6. X is equal to 1. Okay. We then take that answer, and plug that in for x in the other equation. So here we have 3x plus 3y equals 9. We plug in 1 for x. We get 3 plus 3y equals 9. Then we're going to minus 3 from both sides. And then we're going to have 3y equals 6, divide by 3, and we get y equals 2. So that's our answer. And then we just need to check the other equation, make sure it works as well. We just need to plug one of them in. So let's just do it real quick. 4x plus 2y equals 8. We plug in 1 for x. We get 4 times 1 plus 2y equals 8. We get 4 plus 2y equals 8. Then we're going to minus 4, minus 4. Then we get 2y equals 4, divided by 2, y equals 2. And that's what it is. So we're good. That works. So that's an example of multiplication systems of equations, where the first one is you just multiply one of the equations to make it match up. The second one is you multiply both equations, you get them to match up, then you add or subtract. That's kind of your notes for today. Make sure you add these to your notebooks, and I'll see you in class. Remember, the test is Thursday.